Today we're going to test 6 popular steak myths. You see them all over the internet, and today we're going to decide which ones are worth your time and which ones you just need to not worry about anymore. The first myth we're going to tackle is the room temperature steak. If you look at any recipe on the internet or YouTube, they start out with,
bring your steak to room temperature by sitting it out on the counter for 30 minutes.
So I have a couple of problems here. I come from a restaurant background, and at no point at any steakhouse across the country do they bring your steak up to room temperature before they cook it. They would get instantly shut down by the health department. So right off the bat, I'm a little skeptical. The second problem is, how long do you think it takes for this refrigerated steak to get to room temperature? Well, today we're gonna find out. So we're gonna put this one on the counter, and I'm gonna leave it out, and we're gonna see how long it takes to get to room temperature. Then we will get a cold steak that is very similar to this one, and then we'll cook both of them and see what the differences are. And is it really worth your time? To start out, this steak is temping at 41 degrees. So we're gonna check in on this periodically throughout the video to see how it's going. While we wait, we'll head to the next one. Next myth we're gonna tackle is butter basting. Is it worth it? Fact or fiction? You've seen the videos of people taking a seared steak and then basting it with thyme or garlic infused butter, and then letting it pour over that steak, continuing to season it, browning the butter so it gets a nice nutty flavor. But I always want to know, is it worth it? Is it different than just putting some butter on the steak after it's cooked? Today we're going to put it to the test. We're cooking 2 ribeyes. We're going to sear them off in a cast iron skillet, cook in the temperature, and then one we're going to butter baste with thyme and garlic. And then the other one, we're just gonna put a compound butter on top of the steak with the same ingredients so we can compare apples to apples. All right, so we have our 2 ribeyes. We have our butter basted ribeye, and then we have our one just with herb compound butter on top. So let's give it a try, and let's do the compound butter first. Again, while it's resting, you just put the compound butter on, and it just kind of sits there and gets all melty and delicious. So buttery. Really good. You get the herb flavor from the compound butter. Again, all we did in the compound butter was put garlic and fresh thyme in there, and it's pretty good. Let's try our butter basted steak. Now, the butter basted steak does have a different cooked butter flavor, so that beurre noisette is what they call it, that brown butter flavor, and it's really, really good. The herbs come through, the garlic comes through. I really enjoy, this is gonna surprise people because I'm not a butter basted guy, but the butter basted really takes it up a level. You've got that cooked butter and it really flavors the steak and complements the steak really well. So in this head-to-head challenge, I'm gonna say butter basted wins rather than just putting the compound butter on top. So now let's go check our room temperature steak. It's been 1 hour. Let's see what it reads at and see if it's to room temperature yet. So our room temperature steak experiment after 1 hour, we're sitting at about 56 degrees. So again, we got us a long way to go before we hit room temperature, even if it's a cold room. So we're gonna keep going. We'll check in another hour or so and see how close we get. On to the next myth. So we're gonna talk about dry brining. Now, what is dry brining? It's basically when you take a steak and you salt it the night before and let it sit in the refrigerator, but uncovered. Now what happens is that salt releases a little bit of the moisture on that surface level, and then because you have it uncovered, it's supposed to dry it completely. So you've dried out that 1/16 of an inch or so of the surface, so that when it hits the hot pan, you're gonna get a better sear. Now, let's test it out, because I wanna know if this works. Is it worth your time? Because, man, I don't know, do I wanna salt my steaks 24 hours in advance? Kind of seems like an extra step. So let's see if that extra step is worth it. So this is my dry brine steak right here. So yesterday I salted it, put it in the refrigerator. This is a steak that we're just gonna salt right now. We're gonna fire up our cast iron skillet, sear them off, cook them, and we'll taste them and see what the difference is in the sear and the flavor. All right, so our steaks are out of the oven. I seared them 2 minutes per side on cast iron. I want to do the exact same time so we can compare the different crusts, the different caramelizations. We're gonna go ahead and slice these open. and I want to taste it too. I want to know if the flavor difference is worth it. You can really see the difference on the two. This is the dry brine steak, and it got a little bitter crust. You see it's more brown, where this one's a little more spotty. So, you know, so far with the eye test, it looks like the dry brine worked. So here is our regular New York strip, just seasoned right beforehand. Delicious. I love a New York strip. All right, for our dry brine one, let's see what the difference is. So there definitely is a flavor difference. The seasoning on the dry brine steak really penetrated that surface of the meat, and it just has a more pronounced salt flavor. You know, I'm actually kind of surprised, because I usually don't dry brine my steaks. I usually just season them and cook them. But this may convert me, because I think this is a really good steak. I think the flavor is much, much better when you dry brine. So with this experiment, dry brine is winning. So the next technique or myth we're going to talk about is resting. And is it worth it to rest your steak after it cooks? Or is it a waste of time? Or how long do we have to rest it? We're going to answer all these questions today. And who's going to help me? My friend Terrace Major. Now, if you've seen this channel, you've seen me break these things down. It is a chuck tender, so it comes from the chuck, and it's a little bit cheaper, but it's still super tender. So it's one of those secret butcher cuts. But I had to do a little bit of butchery in every video, you know, so here, all we're gonna do is take this little silver skin piece off and clean it up. That's really the only thing you need to do with these, okay? So we'll take our knife, you'll wiggle underneath that silver skin till it makes a handle. You're then gonna take your finger, grab onto it, apply reverse pressure, and slide off the silver skin. Try it again. Like I said, this is really the only cleanup that needs to happen with this one, so they're super easy. They're super delicious too. I love the flavor of this Terrace Major. We're just gonna simply throw it in the oven and roast it so that we can test our resting procedure. I get a lot of comments about what kind of brands I like when it comes to knives, when it comes to pans, when it comes to vacuum sealers and grinders and all that stuff. So I put together a list for you. If you go ahead and click the link in the description, I'll send it right to you, and you can see the brands that I like, and you can go check them out and kind of see if that's something you want to pick up. All right, so here's our cleaned Terrace Major. I'm gonna go ahead and season it, throw it in a 450-degree oven until it comes to temperature, and then we're gonna let it rest. And I'll talk more about resting here in a second. Let's go through this in the oven. Here are our Terrace Major. I cut it in half, and then, so we're gonna slice one right away, right out of the oven, and the other one we're gonna let rest for 10 minutes, and we're gonna see the difference. So again, we have our Butcher Wizard 12-inch slicing knife, link in the description, and let's take our first piece of Terrace Major here, and we're just gonna slice it super thin. All right, we're gonna get our puppies all stacked up right over here. Where does resting the meat come from? Why do we do it? So what happens is, as it cooks, all the juices inside start to move around. All the steam starts to boil all the water out, and it just kind of circulates throughout the meat. When you rest it, you're letting everything slow down. So everything, think about when it's really hot and you're really going really fast, and then it cuts open and then all the juice spill out. So that is the thought behind resting your meat. So we get everything to slow down. Hey, chill out, slow down. We're not in a hurry here. We're just gonna have a nice time. So here we are with our cut right out of the oven, and then we will slice this one in 10 minutes. Be right back. All right, so it's been 10 minutes for the resting portion of our Terrace Major. So let's slice this one and see what we got. All right, so at first glance, we have a little bit better red color, a little better medium color, medium rare color throughout the meat. The heat has had time to expand from the inside out, so it's got a more even color. You can see this one right here has a distinct kind of pink middle with a gray outside, where this one is kind of like medium rare all the way through. So that's an interesting aspect of it. We're gonna let this sit here for another 5 minutes, and I wanna see if the juices are different from each one. Does this matter? Does it matter to rest it, to let the juices slow down? Are we gonna have a big difference? I wanna see for myself. Right, so we've let everything happen for another 5 minutes. So let's take the meat off and let's see what kind of meat juice puddle has been left. Ooh, meat juice puddle. Is that like a band name? I don't know. So there is our sliced right away, and here is our sliced after it's rested. I don't know, guys, like I would say that there's a same amount of juice, of liquid on either side. This is kind of interesting because I've always been a rest your meat guy, and I don't know if the science brings it out. I don't know. We'll see. Can we let's taste one. Let's taste one right out of the middle. All right, that's that one. Kind of surprising results here. There's not a ton of difference between the one that was sliced right away and the one that was rested. It does have a better color. So this one right here, the allowing it to rest made that medium rare go all the way through the meat. Where, I don't know, this one, I don't know if it was just because it was thinner or what. This definitely requires a little bit more, more research because there's not a ton of difference. Now I know when I've done bigger cuts of meat, like a prime rib, strip roast, something like that, that it does really, really matter because you can definitely tell when you cut it too quickly. So maybe it's the size of the meat. I'm gonna say this, we have further testing to do. So if you wanna see further testing on how to rest your meat, please drop a note in the comments, let me know to make the video because let's deep dive into this thing. As far as who's gonna win, I'm gonna go resting just because of maybe a preconceived notion, and this one looks a little better. So we're gonna go for our experiment to make our perfect steak. We are going to rest it for 10 minutes. Next, we go to slicing. Does slicing against the grain matter or not? That's next. Let's do another quick check of our ribeye that is coming to room temperature. This has been 2 hours. And we are at 63, 64 degrees. So getting closer, but it's been 2 hours. All right, next we're gonna talk about slicing. Now, is slicing against the grain a myth or is it a fact? Now, you can see that what I have here is a Terrace Major, similar to what we just did. I seasoned it, I put it on my Traeger Woodridge Pro outside, and then cooked it to medium rare, and then we're going to go ahead and slice it. And I'm going to show you two different ways of slicing it. One is the wrong way, I think, and one is the right way. So let's just see what's going on. Basically what's happening, so the muscle fibers of this cut of meat is going this way. Long muscle fibers. To talk more about muscle fibers and tenderness of meat, I wanted to show you one thing that I decided to do with spaghetti. I know, spaghetti, crazy, huh? Go check it out. When we're talking about slicing meat, we need to really pay attention to the muscle fibers. And to show this, I'm going to show you with some spaghetti. So imagine that the fibers in the muscle of the meat are like spaghetti, okay? Nice and long and thin. But if we cut our spaghetti, our muscle, like this, lengthwise, this is really hard to eat. See, it's really hard to eat. We can't, it's tough, it's chewy, it's too much to put in your mouth. But if we take our knife and cut this way across, right here, we have a much smaller piece to eat and chew. And see, now it's much more palatable. And now I have spaghetti all over my kitchen. So now we know about muscle fibers, we are going to cut half of this with the grain and half of this against the grain. If my If my knowledge of muscle fibers are right, then cutting against the grain is going to make it more tender, and cutting it with the grain long ways is going to make it less tender. So let's just see how it goes. We're busting myths today, all right? Mythbusters. So we're going to go half here. And for this one, we're going to cut with the grain, long ways. You can see that there are long grains right here, long ways. That is a no-no, I would say. Well, it's what we're going to see, though. And this one, we're going to cut against the grain. Again, shortening those muscle fibers, making it more tender. Here we go, long ways. This is so weird for me that I'm even trying to go this. This breaks every rule that I think I know about meat. All right, let's do the long ways first. Do against the grain. Now the Teres Major is a pretty tender cut on its own, but you can definitely tell the difference. When you cut it long ways, it is chewier than if you cut it against the grain. So in this case, remember, we're testing all these things that we think we know about steak, but for this one, against the grain is the way to go. So good. I get to eat steak all day for my job. It's kind of crazy. Now we're going to talk about carryover cooking. So basically what happens is the heat that's in the roast or the steak has to radiate out after you pull it out of the oven. Everything is still cooking, and that's what's called carryover cooking. Usually when you have a big roast, I would say 10 degrees is a good rule of thumb that you're going to have to carry over as it's resting. But I want to put that to the test today. So what we're going to do is every 5 minutes, I am going to temp this. Now we are starting out at 115 degrees, and in 5 minutes, we'll see how much more it has gone up. See you in 5. All right, that was our first 5 minutes, and we are at 119. So already gone up 4 or 5 degrees to start out with, and we're gonna hit another 5 to see when it starts to level off a little bit so we can really get a good grasp on how much this roast is gonna carry over cook. We are sitting at 125. 15 minutes. We are at 130, so we've gone up 15 degrees already. We're gonna go 5 more and see if it slows down a little bit, and then we'll be back in 5. All right, here we go, 20 minutes in. Yep, we're looking about 132, so it's slowing down quite a bit. You know, the carryover cooking it's imperative that you pull your roasts or your steaks out of the oven. Now we're looking at 15 degrees, 18 degrees for this carryover cooking project. So really think of that 10 to 20 degrees if you're doing a big prime rib like this. So carryover cooking, gotta do it. Make sure you have the perfect cook on your roasts. All right, let's head off to the next one. All right, so it is finally time to test our room temperature steak. I know you've been waiting all video for this. Well, we now have gotten it about 269, 70 degrees, which is, I'm gonna call it it's 68.5. I'm gonna call that room temperature for this experiment. I have another ribeye that we just pulled straight out of the refrigerator. So so this one's right at 40 degrees. So we are going to sear both of these and then see which one turns out better to see if it's worth it. It took us 3.5 hours to get this steak right here to 70 degrees. So let's see. I don't know what's gonna happen. I can't wait. So stick with us. Let's go. Drop the room temperature one in first. Make sure it gets good contact. And then this is our cold one. Good contact. All right, so here we go. This is our room temperature experiment. We have the room temperature steak. Remember, it took 3.5 hours to get to 70 degrees. And then we have our cold out of the fridge steak. I cooked them for exactly the same amount of time. We seared them on a cast iron skillet, finished them in the oven. Everything should be the same. So let's slice into these things and see what we got. We're going to go with this is the cold steak first. So we're going to go ahead. First of all, look on the outside. I will say the sear is a little bit better on the room temperature steak than it is on the cold steak. So that's number one. The sear is a little bit better. All right, so here is our cold steak, cold ribeye. Let's cut into the room temperature one. So right off the bat, you know what? The cooks on them are pretty similar. So we have, this one is the room temperature one, and this one is the cold one right out of the fridge. So it's a little bit different, but there's not a lot of difference. Let's go ahead and give it a taste, see if we can tell the difference. Ooh, that's good. Do love a good ribeye. All right, so my final verdict on this is that it is not worth it to set this thing out on the counter for 3.5 hours before we're ready to cook it, cook a steak. Again, I went back to the restaurants. No restaurant in the country takes out the steaks to room temperature and cooks them. I don't think you get that much difference for cooking a cold steak and cooking a room temperature steak. So this myth is going to be not good. So this is what I'm saying. I would not take the time to make your steak at room temperature. Bottom line, done. That we can close that chapter.